made by his belief. As he believes, so he is. It's a very powerful quote from the Bhagavad Gita, and true to that is our guest, who I take the privilege to introduce, Mr. Nitesh Gaur. A social entrepreneur, educator, author, a modern-day philosopher, widely recognized for his work in Vedic wisdom and its practical application in leadership, commerce, and education. Nitesh is the founder of Avanti Schools Trust, a pioneering group of schools distinguished by their unique ethos, one that integrates academic excellence with spiritual insight. The Avanti curriculum brings together meditation, yoga, philosophy, and ethics, offering an education that nourishes both intellectual and character. Before dedicating himself fully to education and social impact, Nitesh built a distinguished career as a CEO and director across the exploration and investment banking sectors. His work has inspired a wide range of innovative initiatives, including a Dharma-based endowment fund and indexes introduced under the Dow Jones, a retreat center and a farm in England countryside, a brand of restaurant and well-being spaces focused on conscious living. Nitesh holds an MBA from the London Business School and an undergraduate degree in science from the University of London. In recognition of his public service, he was appointed Deputy Lieutenant for Greater London in 2013, and in 2018, he was awarded an OBE, Order of the British Empire, in the late Queen's birthday honors for his outstanding services to education. I now request Mrs. Purnima, our principal, VidyaShilp Banashankari, and Mrs. Nalini Ponnappa, Academic Director, VSEG Schools, to kindly present Nitesh Gaur with a token of appreciation. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, please join me in welcoming Mr. Nitesh Gaur.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for welcoming me to your school. Put your hand up if you were supposed to be in a test today and it got delayed. Okay, you can thank me later. You're welcome. I hope I don't get blamed for any lack of performance later in the year. So today we're going to be going through some insights in terms of mindfulness and how it can help in terms of decision making. Okay, so you know the topic. I'll be speaking and going through this presentation for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have a little break. And then after the break, we'll get into some moderated questions, and then you'll have an opportunity also to ask a couple of questions. Is that okay? Sorry, you've been sitting for about 20 minutes. So if I see you dozing off, I'll get you to do some exercises. Okay, so this is what we're going to go through. So I split it into three parts. So one's about essentially this idea of deciding what to do. So how do I get to a place of deciding what exactly should or do I want to do? Doing it right, a little bit around the ethics of the decision that we're thinking about. And then the third one is around actually sticking to it, because once we starting that process is one thing, but sticking to it is when the going can get a little bit tough. So part one, deciding what to do. Ready, right? I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, and hopefully, have you seen this? Put your hand up if you've seen this dilemma before. Okay, so hands down. So that's about 50-60% of you. So put your hand up if you would. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the dilemma is this: there's a train track. There are 5 people on the track, okay? The train is moving towards those 5 people and it will kill those 5 people. You are the person standing by the lever. If you pull the lever, the train will divert and kill only 1 person. Is the scenario clear? Okay, getting some nods. How many of you will pull the lever? And okay. And put your hands down. How many of you would not pull the lever? Okay. Less. So this is a very common dilemma that's introduced in ethical courses, and mainly just to highlight this notion that choosing the right thing to do is not always an easy decision. It's not straightforward. And you could easily, if you were to have this conversation, if we had time to do it, you would have lots of arguments on both sides of this argument, right? It's not like straightforward. There's a whole piece here around, do I exercise my agency to make a difference and save the lives of 4 people? But then in doing so, in exercising my agency, I also become implicated in the repercussions, right? I now become implicated in the death of that one person in a much more active way than I was if I just let it be. And if I let it be, I'm implicated because I was negligent, or I ignored the fact that I could have saved 4 lives. So it's not straightforward. That's the first point. Any advice for this driver? Do you have any advice for this driver? I heard that the traffic in Bangalore was really, really bad. But I haven't experienced it so far. I hope I don't jinx myself. So this person, this driver, whoever they are, is stuck. What are their choices? What are their choices? Go ahead. Shout, nice and loud. Honk. Okay, yeah, that's a standard thing to do. Honk. Okay, what else? What other choice have they got? Yeah. Stop and let the sheep go. It looks like they're doing that anyway. Okay, just push them out the way. Take another route. You see another route? Okay, find another route. Okay. Get out of the car and what? Get out of the car and walk. Okay. Okay, so in what scenario? See, what happens is sometimes we get to a point, we're trying to make a decision. We get to a point and we're like, do I push or do I just accept? Yeah? So right now, the responses that you've given me are along the lines of pushing, i.e. keep trying, try something else. There is another approach to this, right? The other approach is what? Just wait. That is a legitimate approach, is it not? And in actual fact, that's probably more likely what they're going to have to do. The question is, are they going to be comfortable just being able to wait? So in some scenarios, again, I'm going to keep coming back to this point. It's these types of situations are not ones where you're going to have a black and white, yes or no, right or wrong, clear-cut decision. Because how a person responds to this scenario will depend largely upon their own personality. That's one thing. But the other thing is how they respond will depend on their own capacity to control their emotions. Because if somebody's doesn't have agency, doesn't have the capacity to control their emotions, they're going to react in a very different way. Okay, so you can imagine this becoming very agitated. Okay, we're going to move on. So there are broadly, the Gita kind of gives us some advice in terms of the different stages of action. And there are, broadly speaking, these 4 stages of a decision and an action that you're about to take. Because when we take an action, it's not in isolation. There's a bunch of stuff that's happened before that action, right? We have a whole lot of impressions that could just be subconscious. We're not even aware of those impressions because they've taken place over years. And over those impressions, we then tend towards certain types of inclinations. That's kind of determining our leaning or our personality leanings. And then from those, we're creating intentions. And only after that are we actually making a decision. Are we actually acting? So it's a bit like, if you think about the archer in these images, so at a certain point, can you see, like, from sharpening the arrow to reaching for the arrow to putting the arrow on the bow, making aim, and then firing the arrow? So if you think about implementations as firing that arrow, can you see that once you've fired the arrow, you have no choice, right? You've taken the decision. And the closer you get to impressions, the more ability you have to actually guide your choice. Does that make sense? Okay, not, because I don't see nods. So think about it this way. When you're coming up to a decision, when you're about to take an action, all the things that lead up to the action, the more and more you are focused on a decision, the less and less you are likely to change that decision. Because you're increasingly moving from impression to inclination to intention to implementation, right? So you have some agency, but that agency starts to reduce. So the idea is, if you're going to make a difference, if you're going to make an intervention, the earlier you make it, the easier it's going to be to actually determine what you want to do. And that's why the impressions that we take in are so important. The impressions that we take in, whether it's through media, through however you news, etc., even conversations, those impressions are going to eventually guide our decisions. Okay. So one thing is around this notion of thinking, then feeling, then willing, then doing, right? The 4 stages. The other is degrees of choice. Now, in this picture, this person on the bike has a choice. What is their choice? Somebody shout it out. What's the choice? Okay, to steal it or not. Am I going to take this phone or not? Okay, that's the choice they have. Okay, at this point in time, they chose to take it. Their choice has changed. The options in front of them have changed. Now, what are their options? Do I hand myself in or not? Do they have the option now of taking the phone or not? That set of choices has disappeared. A new set of choices is now in front of them. They've now decided that they're going to hand themselves in. Now that they've handed themselves in, what's their decision at this point? Shout it out. They're going to, they have a choice of how they represent themselves in court. Am I guilty or not guilty? What's my plea? Okay, that's my choice now. The other choices have disappeared. And finally, they have this choice. Do I run or do I not? Okay, so the point is that once you make a decision, it's like a decision tree. How many of you heard of the term decision trees? Okay, not so many. So the idea is that you have a decision in front of you that has a set of options. You take that, and like a tree kind of forks out. As you move along, different options are appearing to you. Different options are manifesting, and you can't go back. So it's important for us to remember that at each stage that we're making a decision, there will be consequences to those decisions, and then a new set of options will come about. Okay? All right. So now we're going to go. The first bit was essentially around making a decision and what the factors are that play into that. So the idea that decisions, you don't always have the same options available to you all the time. So when those options are available to you, think about that carefully, because that option may not be available to you tomorrow once you made this decision. And the second piece around the idea of thinking, then feeling, then willing, and then doing. This idea that the closer we move down that chain, the less easy it's going to be for us to change our decision. So be careful. Like, if you're going to make a change, do it early. It's easier to do it early. Okay. Now we're going to go into a little bit about doing it right, and put your hand up if you don't know the basic story of the Ramayana. Thank God. Okay. We're going to go through doing it right, but I'm going to take some lessons from the Ramayana, which I think are really informative in terms of how we think about the ethics of a decision. Like, what can help us when we think about making the right decision? And I'm going to just pick 4 examples, okay? So, this is a quote, well, actually, tell me if you recognize this. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will be the greatest enemy. Wow. I thought it was the 6th verse. Are you sure it's the 5th verse? You are, yeah? Wow, well done. Amazing. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita, right? So it's your favorite verse, is it? Yeah, okay. So this idea that the mind can be our friend or our enemy, right? And if we want to be able to have some agency and not just be bounced around and forced to do things. And by forced, I mean by habit, by peer pressure, by all the other external factors that come into deciding what I'm going to do. If I want to be able to decide what I want to do and not all this other stuff, then I have to make my mind my friend. Because if my mind is not my friend, I'm constantly trying to fight my mind. And that's what Krishna means here when he says the mind can be the enemy. Have you had that experience where the mind is like constantly telling you something and it just won't listen sometimes? And that's when the mind is behaving like our enemy, because the mind is not allied to what I want to do. Okay, so we know the story of Ram, and the Ramayana from this perspective, obviously you can read the Ramayana in many, many different ways, but just for this session, this idea of the story of Ram and the idea of the polar opposite between Ram and Ravana, okay? So this idea that Ram represents the reservoir of pleasure, which is what the word means, and Ravana represents this idea of one who makes other people cry, right? So this kind of dichotomy or polar opposites. So in this first instance, you know this story about how Kaikeyi loved Ram more than she loved her own son, Bharat, right? This idea that we understand that she had this deep, profound love for Ram. And yet, she was the one who requested his banishment. And she requested it after this conversation with Manthara, right? So this idea of who we are hearing from, who we're listening to, the idea of association can change even the best of us. So regardless of how strong we are, our association, who we're hanging out with, what messages we're hearing, can make a real difference in terms of the decisions that we're about to make. And on the other side is Bharat. This notion of Bharat personifying this idea of service. That even though he was given the kingdom, what did he end up doing was to just use it as a way to serve Ram. So this notion that on one side, association and the messages that we hear are really, really important if we want to think about making the mind our friend. If we want to make the mind our friend, and we're constantly hearing things which are unethical or which are moving us away from the direction that we want how we want to see ourselves and live our life, and the amount of pressure that now comes through the devices that you hold in your hand or through other media that you consume, how do you navigate that? And the first thing in that process of navigation is to be aware. This stuff is not agnostic. This stuff is not benign. It's not something that has zero effect, that you can just consume something without a consequence. Okay? And if you think about what we were talking about earlier, it's starting at that first stage, which is inclination and impressions. It's creating inclinations and impressions, which at the point of consumption, you don't see the action, you don't see the repercussion, because remember, it hasn't got to the stage of intention and implementation yet. Okay, so this point is about the difference, the balance between Shurpanaka's role And Shurpanakha's in this instance is, I like Ram, and I don't care what it takes to get him. And I will get rid of anything in my way to get him. There's no rules, there's no boundaries, it's just about what I want. And on the right, we have Sita, who is marrying Ram. So this notion of when I'm thinking about my choices, it's not to say that the Vedic perspective is that you shouldn't have a good time or that you shouldn't enjoy yourself. The point is that if you want to really enjoy yourself, truly, in the long term, not just in the short term and in the moment, then you have to have some kind of parameters to that enjoyment. You have to have some kind of boundaries that mean that that thing is not going to be destructive for you. Because if you don't, if you have zero boundaries, that thing in the moment may seem really attractive and really enticing, but it eventually will lead to destruction. It will lead to this, by destruction I mean the degradation of your own character. And here we have the famous kind of contradiction between Ravana kidnapping Sita and Hanuman's job in reuniting, finding and reuniting Sita, right? Like this idea of the position of Ravana here is like taking something by force versus placing something in its proper place. This idea that when we're operating in the world, how do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves as, I'm just here to have a good time and everything else in this world is for my benefit? Or do I see myself as a caretaker or a custodian for the world that I find myself in? And then the last one is here, which is this fight between Sugriva and Bali. Now, this is quite interesting because Bali was actually stronger than Sugriva, right? We know the story. But Sugriva was, the commentators on the Ramayana make this point that the reason why Ram sided on the, with Sugriva, this notion that Sugriva was not, even though he had his faults, he's not described in the Ramayana as a perfect person. But the one thing that Sugriva did have that Vali didn't have was that he was willing to take help. Vali had this sense of real arrogance that, like, I am who I am and I don't need anybody else. And this fourth lesson about decision making is that you don't have to do everything by yourself. There are people around who love you, who are there to help you. So sometimes when you come to a critical decision, or even not a critical decision, sometimes it can feel like a lonely place if you don't have people that you can rely on or people that you can confide in. And this lesson is about, you don't have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to have 100 really close best friends. You just need one or two, right? And if those one or two are there for you to confide with, and whether that's parents, siblings, kids in your school and class, whatever it is, then that makes that decision-making process a lot better. Because when you're in that moment, for you to think clearly is not always so easy. But when you have an external perspective, and I mean an external perspective, not from somebody on Facebook or whatever you use now, but I mean from somebody who actually cares about you, somebody who actually knows you, it changes it can at least support your approach to that decision you're going to make. Okay? So these are the four things that I wanted to highlight to you. One is around choosing self-discipline and service, and being mindful of the association or the other messaging that comes to you. The second is around enjoying, but within limits. Like be true to your own self. Like know who you are. Like what do you actually value? And then be true to that. Third one is around being clear, your role as a caretaker and not just thinking about things from an exploitative perspective. And then you're not alone, all right? And that's the story of Sugriva and Vali. Okay. So that's, I know I'm going through this. Normally I would take questions like throughout this, but I hope you're able to catch some of these points, and hopefully we'll be able to engage with the questions after the break. Okay, and this is the final part, and this is sticking to it. Like, how do I, once I've decided what I want to do and I'm confident it's the right thing to do, how do I do it and then stick with it? Okay? So, I thought this was a photo from a street in Bangalore, but it isn't. It's somewhere in Thailand. But you know the scene. I've been in this situation before, and it's scary, especially if you're from London and you're not used to it. Is this person in the black car driving on the wrong side of the road, is this person expressing their free will? Put your hand up if you think that the person in the black car is expressing their free will. Okay, put your hands down. Put your hands up if you think that he or she is not expressing their free will. Okay, so you all believe that pretty much all of you believe that this person is expressing their free will, right? Do you believe in free will? You like free will? Free will is a good thing? Anyone think free will is a bad thing? Okay, so you're okay with this? No. Make your mind up. See, when we think about, so societies at large, I mean, I'm talking about kind of progressive democratic societies, are trying to maximize free will. They're trying to, you may not, depending on your experience with your local politicians, you may or may not believe it, but they are trying, or supposed to be trying, to maximize free will for their people. Because we all believe, don't we, that free will is a good thing. So why do we have rules? Why do we have traffic rules? Why do we have traffic rules that say you can only drive, in this case, on the left-hand side of the road? Why do you have a rule? If you want me to express, you said that he or she is expressing their free will, right? So why do we have rules that limit, not end up in an accident? But what if, but you are limiting my free will? Do you accept that? That the traffic rule of only drive on the left-hand side of the road is limiting your free will. Do you accept that point? Yes? Okay. So why are you doing that? Because I want to drive on the right-hand side of the road. Go ahead. No? No? Okay. Somebody else? Why are you doing that? You're on the right track, actually, if you just kept going. So why does a government insist that you must drive on the left-hand side? Maintain order. Okay, because if everybody just did whatever they wanted to do on the roads, guess what would happen? What would happen to... So if free will is up here... So, okay, put it like this because I can't reach so high. If free will is here with traffic rules, I want free will to be up here, which is like, I can do whatever I want on the road. But if you get rid of traffic rules, will free will go up here or will it go down here? Why will it go down? It's chaos. And when there's chaos, nobody has free will. Thank you. So the overarching law, like order, maintaining order, having an accident, all of these things come into play. So now what happens is the overall amount of free will that you have, if there are no traffic rules, goes down, not up. So we might think that, okay, free will goes up because I can do whatever I want on the road. But the cumulative societal effect that emerges from getting rid of traffic rules is that free will overall for everyone goes down. Make sense? That's why we have rules. It's why you have rules in a school. It's why you have rules on the road. It's why you have rules in the justice system. It's why we have rules in any form of societal framework. You have rules. And that's true also for the kind of journey that you might want to go in when you proceed in when you're thinking about decisions. There are rules that will help form your character. Don't lie. Is that limiting your free will? As an ethical imperative, it's limiting your free will. But then what happens as a consequence of that ethical imperative? Your free will overall, across society, goes up. Because now you can trust the person you're speaking to. Do you understand? Does that make sense? Okay, good. So the point here is, don't be afraid of good rules. If the rule makes sense, don't be afraid of it. Don't think that it's just impacting you negatively. It's just not true. It's not true anywhere. It's a misconception of hyper-individualized, typically Western psychology, which is that everyone should be absolutely free. It's a nonsense. Okay. What's going on here? Lights are too bright. What's going on? Anyone? Yep. It's trying to eat a turtle. Okay, and what's happening? What is the tortoise able to do? Or turtle, whatever it is. Okay. Yep. Okay, so in the Gita, Krishna says, be a tortoise. Anyone know that verse? You know it? Kind of. What part of it? Because I don't know much of it at all. But tell me what you know. Yeah, okay, fine, no problem. So, yeah. Okay. So basically, in the Gita, Krishna is saying that the idea of yoga is that somebody has the capacity to withdraw their senses from interaction, like a tortoise is able to withdraw itself. So what happens is sometimes you find yourself in a situation where there is provocation, where there is something happening externally that you could react to. And if you react in a certain way, it's going to end badly for everyone, apart from maybe the leopard. But for you, it's going to end up badly. In that situation, do you have the capacity to exercise self-restraint? Do you have that capacity? And this sounds real simple. Like, yeah, of course I have the capacity. But most of us, if we're not practicing exercising that capacity, when we find ourselves in that situation, it's very, very difficult to do. We are almost definitely going to just respond. And we don't have the capacity to allow ourselves to be brought into a space. And one of my favorite psychologists is a guy called Viktor Frankl. Put your hand up if you've heard of Viktor Frankl. Not many of you. Okay, if you're interested in psychology, he's written a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a prisoner in a concentration camp during Nazi Germany. He survived the concentration camp, and during his time in the concentration camps, he wrote lots of notes and about his observations of human behavior. And he talked about a lot of things, but one of the things he talked about was how are we able to exercise agency, free will, choice? How are we able to do that? And you can imagine, if you think school is bad, like a concentration camp, it doesn't get worse than a concentration camp. Like to make a free, intentional decision in a concentration, can you imagine how difficult that might be, right? It's like unimaginable. So in those contexts, he still found people who are able to maintain a sense of positivity. So he was thinking, what is it? What is it that differentiates these people who are able to maintain a sense of positivity with this group of people who are not? And one of the things he came to was between this quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is your power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. If there are, and there will be, stimuli constantly coming at you, if you are not able to create a gap, if you're just responding constantly, you're not exercising any free will. There's no free will there. It's just what's the word? Word has slipped my mind. But it's just essentially, an automated response. There's no free choice being had. And the way to introduce choice, the way to introduce free choice is to create a gap. So you have to find ways that work for you to create a gap between the stimulus and the response. Now, there are different kind of ways that you can think about that. But one of the frameworks that the Gita provides is called the gunas, the trigunya. And it's kind of like a whole session by itself. But for the moment, we'll keep it real simple, okay? I mean, can you remember the last time you felt like this image on the right? Sorry, on the left? Think of a time when you felt like that. Okay, have you got it in your mind? Let's keep it in your mind. There is a concept called the law of names. Have any of you heard of the law of names? One person. Tell us what the law of names says.
If you are given a name, you tend to diverge towards that name, like the stereotypical version of that name.
Ah, okay. You're talking about a different law of names. I didn't know about that one. Where's that from?
I don't know.
Oh, you just made it up.
No. It exists.
It's from somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So that's not the one I know. I know that there's a study by somebody called Lieberman in around 2007. And they discovered that essentially the way that our brains function is that if we are able to name something, if we are able to give an emotion a name in a very particular context, I was angry, it changes our body's capacity to be able to manage that emotion. Think about that. That's a fascinating insight. That just by naming it, you have some power over it. So there's two things here. One is being able to create the gap. And the second thing is when you've been able to create the gap, to be able to reflect on the emotion that you experience and then to be able to name it. And if you're able to do that, you will increase your capacity to change your response to it. Okay? And the gunas give us this framework of green, the traffic light symbols, right? So like green, amber, red. When you, there's a whole like technical kind of thing that we can get into, but for the purposes of this, when you feel like you're observing yourself, you're observing your own state of mind. When you feel that you're in green, green means you're in control of your emotions. And you have to be really deeply honest with yourself when you think about this. Then green means, okay, now you can proceed with the decision you want to make. When you're like this person on the left, you're in red. And anything that you do from there is going to not be good. Not good for you, not good for anyone else. And when you're in between, you're yellow. So when you're in red, you better stop. For your own sake, you better stop and think about what you're about to do. And when you're in yellow, there's a period of extended reflection, so you may decide to go, but do it carefully. Is that a hand? Yeah, go ahead. Can you be in doubt? Yes, absolutely. So that's exactly the case. You're not entirely sure where you're at, and therefore you're reflecting. And just as you are, like, so if you come up to a traffic signal and it's yellow, what do? Right? I mean, unless you're really close to going, you probably want to stop. So it's a similar thing. That you to create that space. And there are lots of different ways that you can do. I'm going to leave you. This is going to be the last slide because, okay, so we're on time. So this is an exercise that you can do. So this is a bit of homework for you, okay? And this is going to be one practical way that you can take away from here, which will help bring what I've been, the concepts that I've been talking about, which are reasonably theoretical, will help them crystallize into something that you can actually do. Okay? So I want you to try this. I want you to list 15 things. And these 15 things have to be something that you really, really like doing. You love doing them. It brings you joy. But, because the last time I did this with a group of Avanti students, I saw stuff like PlayStation on there. So the caveat here is you don't just love doing them, you also experience, your own experience is that when I do this activity, not only do I love it, but I also feel my state of consciousness. Does that phrase make sense? Like my state of consciousness, yeah, okay, good. So I feel and experience my state of consciousness rise. I feel like I'm the better version of myself. Is the task clear? So these two things have to be true. I really enjoy it, and I know when I do it, I experience myself being situated in the best version of myself. When you've got that list of 15 things, and it can be any of whatever else, right? Whatever it is that you come up with. When you've got that list of 15 things, every day, for just 5 minutes, pick one of the 15 things and do it. Just 5 minutes. Is that possible? How many of you think it's not possible? Okay, and I'll give you, I don't gamble, but if I were a gambling person, I would place a bet that 90% of you will not do this. Any guesses as to why you won't do it? Why won't you do it? I don't have time. It's crazy. You don't have time to do something you really, really enjoy. And yet, how many hours in the day do we waste on pointless scrolling, pointless TV, pointless whatever else we might be doing? 5 minutes a day. The truth is, time is not the barrier. It's the most quoted barrier by staff and students. I gave this exercise to, I was doing teacher training, CPD for our staff, and I was speaking to principals and senior leaders and other members of staff, and there are a few hundred people in the audience, and I gave them this task to do, and I was going to see them in 2 weeks. So I gave them the task. In 2 weeks, I went back and I said, how many of you have been doing this every day? Or even first I started every day, then I said once a week, then how many of you even did it once over the 2 weeks? Less than 10%. And 0 did it every day. And the number one excuse was, I have no time. And I said to them, I'm your employer. I'm telling you to do this. I'm making time in your schedule to do this. It's 5 minutes. Time is not the real reason that you won't do this. What is the real reason that most of us will not do this? What's the real reason? Sorry? Too lazy. Thank you. Thank you. That's the truth of it. Most of us are just plain lazy. Any other reasons? Truthful reasons? Mindset. Okay, good. And what's behind the mindset? Sorry, I can't hear.
Our thoughts.
Our thoughts. Okay, so distractions and all of that stuff. Yeah, okay, fine. Or I just don't see the point. So all of these things are the very reason why I'm telling you to try this is because if you think that you're just going to go into the world and suddenly make great decisions and mindful decisions and it's going to happen by magic, you're kidding yourself. Most adults are not mindful in their decisions. It's not just students. Most adults walking around making decisions like zombies, like reacting to life, no agency. Don't be like that. You have a choice. You can actually start to form your habits now. If you just do some real simple things and get into the habit and learning that actually there are practical things that you can do that can change the quality of the decisions that you make. Okay? So I'm going to come back, maybe not in 2 weeks, but we'll be asking and checking in on you. How many of you have done this? And I really, really hope it's more than the percentage that I was thinking about before. And you'll see. So what happens with this stuff is, in the beginning, it's like, well, why should I do it? Does it work? Is it going to make any difference? Etc. etc. We make all of these types of excuses in our minds. But you don't know until you've tried something. And I'm not telling you to do something you don't like. I'm saying pick something you really enjoy. So just try something. See if it happens. And if it doesn't work, fine, don't do it. But if it works, it could change your life. If it works, it could change the quality of your decisions, and it could start to build. This is just a starting point. It could start to build your capacity to live a life in a way that you're so much more in control and able to predict what's going to happen, rather than just being bounced around in life and being stressed out with anxiety and all of these other factors that come in when we become totally dependent on external things to motivate us.